Cheers! Welcome to Culture Night,
where each week we drink fancy wine and watch movies that are in some way culturally significant. I'm Andrew.
And I'm Sarah, and we are back for the season finale of season 2.
Yeah, unless there's any crazy recommendations, I think right now we're going to put the season to a close tonight.
Mm-hmm. So this is season 2, episode 6.
But not forever. I think we talked last week, we'd like to revisit the film noir genre later.
For those of you just tuning in, we are now breaking up the podcast into seasons based on genre or actor or
some sort of
decade,
theme.
Some kind of theme. And this season's theme was film noir. And this is movie number 6 in this film noir series. Mm-hmm. And there's still so many more we need to see, but we could go on and on. But we feel like this is a good place.
Where I don't want to just drill film noir nonstop into us, for months on end. I think taking a break and coming back to it in a couple more seasons, I think will be a much more meaningful move.
Yeah. And I also feel like this was a good place to start for our second season, since these movies are, or most of them are from pretty early on in the Hollywood days. So it kind of gives us a good basis of where movies started.
Yeah, I feel like the black and white, look is kind of like the old school, really getting cultured and seeing the old black and white movies is the thing. So good place to start for sure, but can't stay here forever.
Mm-hmm. And so with that, we'll jump into our podcast business, and barring any crazy suggestions that we feel like we need to watch before next week, we have a theme for season 3. Are you ready?
Drum roll.
Musicals.
It's a long drum roll.
I know. 4 seconds didn't seem like that long, but
so musicals, I think we'll start, with some of the old early on musicals and, move towards some of maybe the more modern ones, but open to suggestions. We kind of have a preliminary list of some we'd like to hit this season.
I was Googling last night, and I mean, I've seen lots of musicals. I was in chorus, middle, high school. We watched them all the time. So I know a lot of them, but there's still some that I want to revisit. I think something that's really cool about this podcast is we're adults now watching a lot of movies. If we have seen them before, a lot of the times it's been 10, 15, 20 years since we've seen them. So to kind of get that adult viewpoint on a lot of these is really interesting.
A different lens, and also just uncover things that just went right over your head when you were younger, whether it was just adult humor or just a reference to something you hadn't learned about yet. And it also gives us an opportunity to dive deeper. So I'm excited to revisit some of these musicals that one or both of us have seen before with a different lens, or ones that we haven't seen at all.
Yeah, I'm very excited. So tune in next week to see where we start season 3.
But yes, please, any recommendations, hit us up on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, culturenightpod@gmail.com, anywhere. We're open to suggestions.
Got them all.
Yep.
So we're all ears for ideas. And now let's move into tonight. So what are we drinking?
We are drinking the 2017 Ducey Vineyards Zinfandel.
Maybe like a earthy nose?
Yeah, definitely get that right off the bat.
And
then a really jammy flavor.
Yeah, I was going to say, I didn't get a whole lot as much on the second.
See, the first one I got a lot of earthiness. Second sniff, I got a whole lot of
like red raspberry jamminess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dark jam.
How does the nose match the
it's very
the taste?
Sweet on the nose.
Very sweet.
But very thick.
Thick and sweet.
Yeah. I think jammy is the word I'd go for.
Yeah. That's exactly the right word. Almost just like strawberry raspberry on the sweetness, which was not the first smell was very barrel.
Yeah, it's not like a sweet wine sweetness. It's like a good dark, fruity sweetness.
Yes, I am very surprised. I was not expecting any of those things.
Yeah, I don't generally think of this for Zinfandel as being this bold, but very, very good. I think it's going to get some high scores tonight.
I know. Ready for it to air out a little bit and see how it changes over the podcast. So with that, it's time for Behind the Screens, where we go behind the big screens of Hollywood and learn more about some aspect of film production or storytelling.
Oh, that's you this week, so I get to sit back and sip on some wine.
You enjoy your wine, and I'm going to do my very best attempt to explain Technicolor. So we started talking about Technicolor back in the Wonder Man episode, which I believe is season 2, episode 4, and just wanted to know a little bit more of the history and the process and how it works. I have read the Wikipedia page. I have watched a couple YouTube videos. I'm probably not going to be the best at explaining this, but I'm going to give the best, very basic overview of how it works.
Maybe one of our viewers can enlighten us even more if we get anything wrong, or
I do not pretend to be an expert. Please correct me. So to start off with, it was a process that was founded in 1916. So it's a lot older than I thought it was. Apparently it's a big lie that Wizard of Oz was the first movie in Technicolor. It was not.
Wow.
So it goes all the way back to 1916, and it was founded by Herbert Kalmus and Daniel Frost Comstock, and they met at MIT. So real smart
people.
And it has gone through several evolutions. There are up to 4, I believe, processes of how it was done. The original process was a 2-strip process, so it took 2 strips of film, working with the colors red and green to make the color, and then it evolved into the 3-strip process, which is what we more commonly know of with red, green, and blue. And how I believe this works is there is a special camera that would shoot the image, whatever they were shooting, and put that image through a prism that would split the light into 3 negatives: a red negative, a green negative, and a blue negative. And then they would like reverse the negatives to make a positive matrix of the 3 different color negatives, and then they would soak each of the negatives in the complementary dye. So the red complementary color is the cyan, green is magenta, and blue is yellow. So they would soak each of those colored strips in the complementary dye, and then they would transfer those dye images on top of one final strip to make the final color.
Wow. How do you come up with this? Like this process? That's
in
wild.
1916.
Yeah.
Let alone ever.
Yeah, that's so cool. Yeah. I mean, I guess it makes a lot of sense to be like, we're going to go ahead and I guess film it. Essentially, it's on 3 separate negatives, highlighting the 3 main colors that we use to represent the colors on modern TV sets and everything. And rather than having a bunch of little LEDs like for pixels that we have today, they must have had to have a different way to combine these into one image. So that makes a lot of sense, but I get kind of lost with the whole complementary colors and combining there, but yes. I definitely got it at the beginning.
So like cyan is the opposite of red. So it'll like bring out the redder colors. The video I watched was helpful with visuals. I'll show it to you later, but
so it's basically the opposite of how we do with film now, where it's like, if we film it all digitally, have that captured, but we display it by having like the 3 colors there with different intensities showing us the different colors. Whereas here it was essentially the opposite, captured in the 3 different colors and then displayed with one light filming through the screen.
Yes.
So that's really cool.
But I thought it was really interesting that like lighting could really play a huge difference in how the colors turned out. So lighting has always been a big part of the artistry of filmmaking, because how lit something was is how dark it would show up on the negative and how much it would pick up the dye and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of how a lot of the early lighting people got their name, was how they had a specific style of how much light they used to light a set. And apparently the Wizard of Oz set was like 100 degrees Fahrenheit because it was so overly lit for whatever style they were going for. So it was very interesting. Also, apparently the cameras were super noisy and they had to be built into like soundproof boxes, because if you were making a sound film, you couldn't hear the people over the sound of the camera.
I guess that makes a lot of sense when you think of some like older, noisier lights with that hum. Imagine having a whole bunch of them.
And the 3 film strips flickering and all that kind of stuff. And then my last fun fact about Technicolor is that by the time they got to this, it was the 4th process, which is the 3 film strip. They were feeling really confident about it, so they convinced Walt Disney to shoot one of his silly symphony cartoons, The Flowers and Trees, in 1932, in his Technicolor process. And Walt Disney was like so impressed by the potential of the Technicolor that he negotiated an exclusive contract for use of the process in all of his animated films until 1935. So for 3 years, he had an exclusive contract with this Technicolor process. So
that Walt Disney guy sounds like a savvy businessman.
Getting his hands in everything, isn't he?
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, I feel like I could watch like a documentary on that.
There was a lot of information out there. It was kind of hard to pick and choose. I knew I didn't have a ton of time to sit and learn everything about it, but it is very intense for sure. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I feel like I've had a good deep dive there. That's really cool. Definitely a different way of thinking about it. Makes a little more sense of how they kind of captured that.
Yeah, cool. So that is our behind the screens, and now it is time to jump into Slept on It for last week's movie, which was Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Does your rating change after sleeping on it? We both rated it a 7.8.
I think we've done a lot of research on this movie, or this past week, more so than we do for most movies. I think given what I've learned from it, I don't want to change the rating just because it turns out a lot of people loved it, but based on some of the things that I've learned and some of the background of it, it's much more interesting to me. And I kind of want to eventually rewatch it again sometime soon, because I think it gives me a much better appreciation for the movie. So I think I could change my rating up to a 8.3, bump it up half a point.
Okay. I'd probably bump it up to an 8. I think this will always be one of the more like along the lines of, oh my gosh, the other one we loved, Forrest Gump. I think this will be like a big pop culture movie and will probably be one of the top ones. But I was not as bold with you at the 10 of Forrest Gump that I don't know how great it is yet, but I feel like maybe an 8 is a good place.
I think there's apparently a lot more influence from this movie than we realized at the time. And a lot of things that we kind of noticed that were really cool. There's a lot more backstory to that as well. So I think it definitely warranted a bump up in ratings based on what we've learned after sleeping on it for a week.
Definitely. All right. So you want to kick off our deep dives for tonight? Yeah.
So I'll go first with Acme and like the Acme Corporation. So obviously we saw it in Who Framed Roger Rabbit as like the
warehouse,
the warehouse, whatever, and the company with the president of Acme and all that. But its origins date back to the 1920s with phone books. So the word Acme comes from the Greek word that means like, the best, the top, whatever. But it's also a word that starts with an A, and the second word is also very early in the alphabet. So a lot of companies in the 1920s, as before search engine optimization, a way to get yourself featured at the beginning of the phone book was to call yourself like Acme, whatever, like Acme clothing, Acme, I don't know, film company, Acme boot
so
makers,
like best
anything.
Film company, best.
Yeah, but also it was kind of like also
beginning
a way
of the
to
alphabet.
get there. So when people would open up the phone book and start at the very beginning, you would see like 100 different Acmes. So one of the film writers, Chuck Jones, longtime Warner Brothers animator, said that whenever they would open up the phone book, they'd see all these different companies that were Acme, and so they kind of like came into their mind that like Acme was just this one company that did everything and made everything. So when they were coming up with a company for their films, like they would just call it Acme and
Acme Dynamite,
as
Acme,
if it was essentially this big conglomerate that literally made everything, as opposed to a whole bunch of different unrelated companies that just wanted to be at the top of the phone book.
Wow.
So it became really popular, like I said, in the 1920s, was in all sorts of movies and things, not just Warner Brothers, even some Disney episodes and shows had it, like a Donald Duck episode had it, but it became most popular for Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote. A lot of Wile E. Coyote's traps would come from the Acme Corporation. But it also was in a lot of other Warner Brothers things, like the Tiny Toons takes place at Acme Acres, and then Roger Rabbit was supposed to be like kind of explaining a little bit of the origins of Acme and kind of showing it as this big company that made a whole bunch of random things, like these little things in all these boxes. Most of them were obviously of low quality, and that was kind of the running gag with the Roadrunner, is that all of Wile E. Coyote's traps would backfire or just be kind of crappy, even though they claimed to do literally everything under the sun. So that kind of explains a bit why they chose Acme and why they showed us as one company making everything. It's because it was kind of like a early days search engine optimization to get yourself featured there.
Well, that is fascinating. I would not have guessed any of that. Yeah. I thought it was all, obviously it is made up for the cartoon in that sense, but I would have thought it was all just this, like, we just picked these letters and just made it and stuck with it kind of thing. But very interesting.
Yeah.
I will look at that differently from now on. Very cool. All right. So I have some fun facts, but I do want to start with, we talked about, we were wondering if Warner Brothers had some kind of tie to MGM, because we knew that Roger Rabbit had a big presence in MGM Studios when it first came out in '88, and it did not. Steven Spielberg's company, Amblin Entertainment, was a big financer of the Roger Rabbit movie, and Steven Spielberg is the one that negotiated Warner Brothers and Universal Studios and any of the other companies that owned these cartoons to lend their characters and their voices to the movie. So it was Steven Spielberg's pull, not any kind of tie between Warner Brothers and MGM. So
it sounds like, are you going to cover how they kind of got all those characters there that we learned from that podcast?
You got it.
So we learned listening to the Walt Disney
WDW radio show.
Yeah. About
with Lou Mangello. Great podcast.
About how all these characters came to be all in the same movie, even though they were, owned by different companies, and there were different like universes and all that. And they had to pay $5,000. Walt Disney, I guess, had to pay $5,000 per character from Warner Brothers that was shown on there. And they also had to have equal screen time with the Disney characters. So in all the scenes that you see, like when you see Daffy Duck and Donald Duck doing a duet, it's a lot of D's there. They were both featured there at the same time so that they could have equal screen time, and it wasn't just showing majority of Disney or majority of Warner Brothers.
Yeah, and my last note that I forgot, and that reminded me, was that there were some stipulations from the Warner Brothers and the Universal and all the other companies of things like equal screen time and like being really good at whatever they were doing, or showing them in a positive light. But otherwise, those production companies were not involved in the actual making. So Warner Brothers was not involved in how Daffy Duck specifically was used, but just had some of those things.
Had to have the some of the voice actors or the animators at least be involved in there. So I probably could dig a little more into that kind of relationship and the actual working together to do that.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I know that there's like so much here that it's like, how deep and how much time do you really want to spend to get to the bottom of it? And then now I just have a couple fun facts. I love these behind the scenes kind of information. So for my first one, because we've done this in behind the screens, is that upon its release, Roger Rabbit had the longest opening credits of any movie to date, running at 10 minutes long.
Wow.
I'm sorry. Opening credits. And maybe they meant ending credits. Maybe I typed it wrong. Sorry. The longest ending credits. I would have noticed
10 minutes of opening credits.
Had the longest ending credits of any movie at its time. It was 10 minutes long, and it credited over 800 cast and crew members.
Man,
However,
I believe it. You'd have a lot of animators and voice actors and all that.
They didn't credit the voice actress of Jessica Rabbit, Kathleen Turner.
Wow.
So even with all, they credited 800 people, but they did not credit her. So crazy. We have 800 episodes to cover all of those cast and crew members not behind the screens. Yes, behind the screens. Yes. Sorry, I'm all out of whack today. Segments. So, fun fact, longest credits. And then the thing that makes Christopher Lloyd's character, Judge Doom, so terrifying is that he does not blink on camera one time. I don't know if you noticed that or paid any attention to that, but he, I guess that was a character choice he made, was he's just not going to blink, so his eyes are always open when he's on screen. Oh God, stop.
That's crazy. Now I really want to go back and watch it and see if I noticed that.
And then we also learned this from the WW Radio Show podcast, but Charles Fleischer, who was the voice of Roger Rabbit, insisted that the costume department design a full Roger Rabbit costume for him, and he performed all of his lines off screen in a full Roger Rabbit garb.
Talk about getting into character.
Right? I was like, that's commitment to really be in
Roger
there.
Rabbit method actor.
Apparently helped him get into character, which I can see because Roger Rabbit's pretty eccentric and out there. They might need that. And apparently Hoskins, who played
Hoskins,
yes, who played Eddie Valiant, thought he was nuts at first, but then I think that helped him eventually get into a character and react.
I see some behind the screens, like pictures and images of this.
Definitely. And then the film features over 140 pre-existing characters. So this kind of goes back to that. There are 81 Disney characters, distinct Disney characters, and then there's 14 groups of characters from some of their like shorts and like Fantasia type things. There are 19 Warner Brothers characters, and then also characters from MGM, Paramount Pictures / Fleischer Studios, Universal Studios, 20th Century Fox, King Feature, Syndicate, and Al Caps Cartoons. So it's a lot of characters.
Of those have now been combined into like the two main.
Probably, I was thinking about that. Yeah. But so
like nowadays they're either Warner Brothers or Disney, but it's really cool.
Yeah. And one more thing is that Michael Eisner, who was CEO of Disney at the time, he was kind of on the fence of whether or not Roger Rabbit would be a big hit. So it was, they had Disney make the movie under Touchstone, their like side company, because they weren't sure if they wanted the Disney name on it. And then after the film's crazy popularity, he was like, well, this is going to be the next Mickey Mouse. We're going to get this in the parks. Within like 3 or 4 months of the film's release in 88, they had a full Roger Rabbit costume character in the parks, and there was plans for expansion of like Disney World and Disneyland to have Roger Rabbit themed lands,
and like sequels, and really build on it to really make it like almost replacing Mickey Mouse.
Like they went in hot and heavy on Roger Rabbit, but by 1992, almost all Roger Rabbit references were removed from the park. So
It sounds like that's a lot due to the timing of when the rise in just their animated like cartoon movies came back.
Yeah, because Little Mermaid came out in '89.
Characters.
And
Aladdin,
Beauty and the Beast. Those were all those early ones that came out, and I think that really took over.
Lion King, yeah.
Oh man, that'd be so interesting to go to a Disney park before those like Belle, Jasmine, Ariel princesses were there. Crazy.
Yeah.
So.
A different world back then.
A whole new world.
Yeah. Oh, well played.
All right, so I think that kind of closes out our time with Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and now it's time to jump into tonight's movie. What are we watching?
We are watching Sin City from 2005. It is a Neo Noir film, so kind of a more modern adaptation of the noir genre.
We will give a little bit more background on that next week in our deep dives, fun facts.
It is rated R, so should be a lot of good violence and nudity and
I was going to say real spicy.
Yeah, all the fun things. But let's hop into our time machine and head back to 2005. The top 3 movies released that year were Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, grossing $380 million, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, grossing $275 million, and War of the Worlds, grossing $234 million. Talk about a packed year for me. I mean, obviously a whole lot of different sequels or series going on that did very well. Tough to compete against those. The top 3 songs released that year were We Belong Together by Mariah Carey, Holla Back Girl by Gwen Stefani, and Let Me Love You by Mario.
It was really hard for me to not include the whole like top 10 because I think, I mean, we were in middle school, high school at this time, that they're just songs that really touched my core.
Yeah. Really speak to our soul for sure.
Yeah. I 100% purchased every single one of these on iTunes. Spent a whole 99 cents for each one of these.
My goodness. Have you seen this movie before?
I have not. Have you?
I have, but not in a long, long time. So I remember watching it when I was coming back from my orientation for college. So that would have been 2009-ish. So watching that on my laptop. So haven't really seen it like on the big screen, and obviously not seen it in a long time. I do know that it's like a fairly stacked cast, like an ensemble cast, and that's the main parts that I remember.
I know nothing. I don't know who's in this movie. I assume, given that it was made in 2005, it is kind of parodying these film noir movies. That it's probably. I assume the parody though is going to be a much darker. I'm expecting a lot more violence.
I don't think it's not parodying it.
I mean, more of like taking that style
and by it,
inspired. That's the word I was looking for. I know it's not comedic in any way.
Yeah.
I am expecting like a really dark, much more like turned up version of the stuff we saw in these earlier films, because the violence in those was laughable in the 1940s. That I'm expecting this to be a lot darker. I don't know a single person that's in it.
Yeah, I remember the previews for it seeming really, really intense and being really, really excited to watch it, but obviously I didn't see it for 4 years after that. Probably found it, on some $5 bin on DVD at that point. But I'm excited to revisit it and dive on in.
Yeah, and I'm, as much as I hate to say this phrase out loud, I'm excited to see how noir you are and see where it falls in that spectrum of those things.
That's true every week.
That's very true. All right, so I guess it's time to jump into Sin City.
Let's go. Cheers. That was Sin City.
Oh, I almost went right back into the intro.
Welcome to Culture Day.
I was just excited.
This is the after show.
Yes.
This is night 2. We had to split this movie up into 2 nights because it was a little bit long and we are getting a little bit tired.
Yes.
Yeah, but same outfits, so continuity. Right?
Yes. You can't really tell as much. Yeah. I'm not wearing my headband, so all you YouTube people can totally tell. You're like, oh man, this is a 2-nighter.
Those who look closely can tell. So let's start with the wine scale. I don't remember what I gave the wine last week. I meant to listen to that when I was listening to the podcast this week. I want to rate it just almost exactly the same. I liked the Big Shot.
You gave last week a 7.
A 7. I'll give this one a 7.1. I did think I like this one a little bit better in certain situations. I think this one was a little thicker.
Mm-hmm.
I would prefer it on like a colder day. I think it could go really well with like the late fall, early winter.
Oh, I'm here for the situations.
Right.
Go.
So I feel like you want the later bodied wines when it's like a bit warmer out. You don't want to drink this on like a 98-degree day, like now. It's nice and cool here in the basement, but this is not you're drinking the after show wine.
Yes, I know.
Okay.
I already have my number locked in.
Okay. So a 7.1. It was very, very good, very full bodied, and very jammy.
It was jammy. I'll give you that. It was very good.
Full disclosure, I got the jammy from the label on the bottle. I cheated a little bit this week and looked at the description. I know you were disgusted with me.
Disgusted. That's the word. Disgust. Lies.
I was like, I think we need to find some more notes to like describe these things. I keep referring to the same 3 or 4 words. And of course we referred to last week's wine also as jammy. Well, but I was looking for like some just inspiration of like things that I could look for, words I could use.
So now that you say that, I picked up my phone to Google words to describe wine because I was trying to, I feel like, again, we are using the same words every week. And then I ended up just Googling this wine and going down that rabbit hole. And jammy was, yes, the word to describe this wine. But
looking for some words to describe this wine without being disrespectful.
Oh man, I'm sorry. I was not expecting to get someone.
I couldn't listen to anything you said until I got that out.
Okay. Anyways, my wine score. We will look up more words for wine for next week. I'm giving it a 5.2. I thought it was good. I don't know that it's going to be a big standout remembering wine for me. Like it's just, it was very solid. It's something that I would drink like as like an everyday wine. No offense, black box in place of the black box, like a easy, like very good wine that would just be a filler, but it's not like a, oh my gosh, like I want to drink this on a special occasion or for something specific. It's just kind of was easy
if we went out to like
a
a nice restaurant and they had that on the menu, I'd say, I mean, obviously we're suckers for Tobin James.
I would do that. But that is just a given for Tobin James. I would order every single one. We went to a bar and we ordered it.
Right. But I can imagine being at a restaurant and someone being like, I don't know what wine to get. We've seen that one and being like, you got to get this one. It's going to pair very well with your juicy steak.
Yes, but I mean, I think I would think it, for me, it was it would go with everything, like very easy drinking, whatever you're eating, for the most part, it would go with.
Yeah.
Maybe not a hot dog, but.
I get excited sometimes with my scale. It's very inconsistent, so.
I know, I was like, you're really specific, but I feel like the scale is all over the place.
Yeah.
So for me, it was a very solid wine. It was like 5 being like, it was just right in the center of like really good everyday drinking wine.
Yeah, I feel like we've gotten better at having some sort of continuity or some sort of like criteria for our movie ratings. At least I, for a while, had a good system with that. I think we, in the off season, need to come up with a criteria to make it a little bit more objective. I do like the subjective, just throwing a number out there, but something to say, to compare similar wines to.
Yeah, I guess we kind of have like a loose rubric-ish for movies of, rewatchability, quotability, pop culture, all that kind of stuff.
Well, with that segue, shall we move into the movie rating? Oh, you got something?
I do have something.
Okay.
So we actually drank the 2016 Juicy Vineyard Zinfandel in episode 7. And I want to compare our scores of the 2016 to the 2017. And that was the Indiana Jones episode, if you feel like you need to go back and watch it. And oh my God, what did you rate wine tonight?
I don't remember.
I think, did you say 7?
Did I rate the 7.1?
You rated the 2016 Juicy Vineyard Zinfandel a 7, and I rated it a 5.2.
What did you rate this one?
5.2.
Oh my God. So we were very close. So we're very consistent with the Juicy Vineyard Zinfandels.
We were very consistent.
Wow.
Because I looked it up last night and I just totally forgot it until right now. Wow, that is impressive.
Wow.
So we're consistent. So whatever our scales are consistent.
I gave it a 7 before.
7 flat before.
I was so close to giving it just a 7 to match the Big Shot until I was like, I think I did enjoy this one slightly more than the Big Shot. Wow, that's wild.
That's crazy. And I mean,
I don't remember. Like week to week, I can't remember a wine that I drank a week ago. Like,
I looked these scores up last night and I didn't remember them until after I re-looked them up after we discussed it.
So apparently year to year doesn't change it. Still a very good wine, no matter what year you find of the Ducey Vineyard Zinfandel.
And whatever our individual scales are consistent.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
I'm glad I brought that back up.
That's wild. Okay.
All right, moving on to the next question.
I will let you go first with the movie rating.
I have been bouncing all over the place from the time the movie started, especially when we do it in 2 nights. I really am trying to be super conscious of what I'm rating it, because I kind of have to remember where I left off and where the movie started, and trying to follow all of that. And I think I'm going to go with a 6.7.
I'm going to go with a 5.
I have a lot to say about my score, and I'm going to save that for my notes and all these other questions, but it waffled anywhere from like a 4 to an 8. So it was I went way back and forth.
Yeah. I don't want to, I want to get to it in these questions. I don't want to like skip too far ahead, but we'll get to it in a second. I gave mine a 5, and I pretty firmly stand by that, and we'll get to that in just a second.
I fully can't
with
wait
like
to hear
the rewatchability, the quotability, the how likely am I to just pick it up and continue to it, and how much did I enjoy it? It still seems like a 5 to me.
Okay, now that you remind me of all those things,
My 4 quadrants, it falls dead center.
Andrew's 4 quadrants. Yeah. It would maybe be a little lower, but I still have my reasons for it being so high.
We don't have to have the same rubric.
No, I like your
rubric. That's just how
though.
I
like it.
Great rating it. Next question. Oh, I'm going to need a bottle of wine before this next question. The movie description. How do I even
I have
start?
been wondering for hours how you're going to even describe it.
I'm just going to say it's a whole bunch of like short stories, slightly intertwined with a film noir vibe, well over the top, crime, guns, women, black and white, and drama.
I was going to say the vaguer the better.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot to unpack.
Any more specific than that, and I basically have to read the script on camera.
I will go into the movie description from the TV, and it says, "Welcome to Sin City. This town beckons to the tough, the corrupt, the brokenhearted. Some call it dark, hard-boiled. Then there are those who call it home. Crooked cops, sexy dames, desperate vigilantes. Some are seeking revenge, others lust after redemption. And then there are those hoping for a little of both. A universe of unlikely and reluctant heroes still trying to do the right thing in a city that refuses to care." Oh my God, that was so long. I thought it would never end.
I feel like whoever wrote this is the kind of kid that I hated back in high school.
Yeah,
It's
I
like,
know.
stop trying so hard to describe. It's a movie, guys.
Yeah. So we watched this on Max, and the description on Max is 4 tales of crime, murder, revenge, and horror play out in a dark, dazzling neo-noir world in this anthology.
I like that description a lot better.
Right? And I was trying to read that one, and you were like, no, let's go back to the other one.
Yeah.
And I think this one is perfectly succinct, because I wish I'd read that beforehand, because trying to follow 4 different stories that kept cutting in and out was very confusing.
Yeah, it was 4 stories, but it was also like one story, kind of.
Yeah. It was the actual storyline, not great for me.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was interconnected enough to make it like interesting, but also felt like 4 very different, distinct stories going on. Was the movie what you expected? Somewhat, just because I have seen it before, but I also don't remember there being so much overlap between the 4.
Yes, in the style-ish sense of the black and white, and I don't think we actually said this in the before show. We talked about it as soon as we stopped recording the before show, of saying like we were pretty sure it was in black and white, and the like drama of the noir style. But I don't know how I don't think I realized how much it was going to lean into the like graphic novel aspect. It very much felt like a comic, and I have lots of things to say about that later. So in the 4 stories, not expecting that.
What were the 4 stories? I guess Bruce Willis's story with like the yellow guy and all that. Marv with Goldie.
The guy that was trying to get Jackie Boy.
Yeah. With Benicio del Toro. And the Hitman, I guess, with Josh Hartnett, who was in it for like a combined 90 seconds.
Or coming back to when Bruce Willis and Jessica Alba got back together, and his like.
I think that was the same story. I think the 4th one must have been Josh Hartnett, who's not even in this graphic that we see there. But
and who's in it for like 3 seconds.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That was, yeah.
Weird.
So those are the 4 stories. How well did it age? I thought it aged about as well as it could have.
Yeah.
It's
I mean,
fine.
I think it is a specific style of movie that they were going for. It's not like it was trying to be super modern. Like it was something very specific they were going for.
So back in the early 2000s, honestly about this same time, my sister got really big into like taking pictures, making them black and white, and then like making just one part of it colored, like photoshopping.
Oh yeah,
and doing
like
the
Picnic
thing around it. Yeah,
that website. Do you remember that?
Yeah. I don't remember what she used to do it, but I just remember her making a bunch of like really artsy like pictures and posting them on Facebook of like
That was
her
very
and her
of the
friends,
times.
whatever, where it's like, oh, I'm gonna make just my eyes blue or just this shirt in color and everything. And I saw a lot of it in this movie where it's like, oh, it's gonna be black and white except for this one thing is red or this one thing is yellow. And it was cool, but it kind of almost became silly after a while.
Yes. I did a light search on it, and it doesn't seem to be any true rhyme or reason of what the coloring is for. Because I was kind of hoping there was some kind of like theme or connection of what all that meant. I want to look into it
the
more.
graphic novel probably did this too,
And that's
just to like highlight a
mostly what I saw.
characteristic about someone.
Yeah, but I will dive a little deeper than the 3-second Wikipedia read I had.
But how well it aged, I thought the acting or the special effects didn't seem too egregious. It was obviously over the top, very like.
But I think they were leaning into the like comic book graphic novel style, which I don't know would change that much.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't seem too like cringy in any way. So, thought it was fine and could it be made today?
Yes.
Sure. I mean, yeah.
I mean, they did a remake in 2014.
I think it was a sequel.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
Sequel. Words are hard.
Yeah.
I'm tired.
I don't think there's anything that could have prevented it necessarily from being made today. It
I
kind
think
of
they
took
could.
place in a specific time period and, is somewhat then timeless going forward. Did they say the title of the movie in the movie? A couple times.
Yes.
Yeah. So Sin City, which apparently is Basin City, and
Which I thought was cool.
yeah,
I would have
another
never
BA.
guessed that.
Yeah, makes it a little bit of sense there. Did the title fit the movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, it all kind of took place in the city. There's a lot of crime and everything, and violence, and it all seemed kind of related in a way. Yeah, I think it very much fit there.
think so
I
too.
can't think of a better title off the top of my head by any means.
Nope. I think it's
So,
perfect.
Yeah.
Were there any actors that went on to do bigger things?
I don't necessarily. Well, yes, there were some that went on to do bigger things. There were also a lot of big name actors that I think were also even big name at the time. Some of the minor actors, though,
Nick Offerman.
yeah, I'm going to give you credit for that one because
Thank
noticed
you. I
that.
need all
I had barely
the
even
glory
seen him
and
on
applause for that.
Nick Offerman, I think, was probably very early on in his career.
I did a light
was before Parks and
filmography
Rec.
research. It was before Parks and Rec. He'd had a couple of like 1-star or like one episode arcs in in like ER and Will and Grace. So he'd had in bigger shows.
Very interesting character for him, looking at this like big like meathead Nazi looking guy.
And I do not know how I picked him up because I don't even think he spoke. Or if he spoke, it was not. If he spoke, it was not obviously him, and it was
yeah, you said it
maybe
was
one
his
line.
scowl that got you.
Yeah, it was his eyes and his frown. I was like, that's Nick Offerman.
Yeah, he had like some like looked like blonde buzz cut hair.
Yeah, and this was like 4 years before Parks and Rec, so pretty early on in his career.
The rest, it's like you had Elijah Wood, Bruce Willis, Jessica Alba, Benicio del Toro, a lot
Alexis Bledel, Rosario Dawson.
Yeah, I think a lot that were already fairly well-known names. So it was kind of like a mix of an ensemble cast plus some that went on to do bigger things or just were like smaller actors in other things. There's some guys that I recognize. I'm like, oh, I think you played minor roles in other various movies.
I mean, it was also a huge cast, so I feel like there was so much going on that it was even hard
The budget
to
on just the
pick it.
cast alone must have been a ton for this one.
Right?
It would be interesting to know how this movie would have fared with just a much more
No-name
unknown
cast.
cast.
I feel like it was the big names that brought him in. I mean, Bruce Willis.
Yeah. It's what got me
In
interested
two-
in it.
in
as, like, seeing the
2005?
previews, for sure. What impact do you think the movie had on pop culture?
I don't know if it affected culture going forward. I think it was affected by culture, by pop culture.
I think the relationship was a bit opposite there. I can see some notes of a lot of various either film noir tropes or just like cliches from them that I think were amplified in this in like a comic book sense. But I don't necessarily know if this really impacted much going forward. I've not seen any movies that are similar to this, obviously, made after this, unless there's something was super parodied. But I don't know if its impact was that that big.
I don't think so either.
And do you feel culture after watching it? Not really. I mean, I already seen it before, and like I said, I don't know how much it's really affected anything besides being like kind of a caricature of it.
I think I do, in that I feel like this is what we were really looking for in a parody of the noirs, or like
this very much felt like a caricature.
Yeah, like taking that idea of how noir you are, and making it in present times in 2005. And I think this is what I think of when I think of that type of movie. And so I'm glad I finally seen it.
Well, since you brought it up, shall we hop into How Noir Yar?
That was not as hype as last week, but I will take it.
That comes at the end.
Okay. Sorry. All right. So going back to our checklist that I found from Todd at the Cinema Monolith, his blog of noir films.
Good old Todd.
Again, if you are watching on YouTube, I will put all of the checklist up above. And if you're listening, I will read them all out loud. So number 1, is it made in the classic noir period of 1940 to 1958? No.
I don't even think it was set in that time period.
Yeah. Their weaponry was way more modern than that time. Black and white. Yes. Short and square. Under 100 minutes. No. And it was not in the square aspect ratio. Made and set in the U.S. Yes. Crime, murder, guns.
Yes.
Double crosses, flashbacks, voiceover narration. Yes. I mean, the whole movie was voiceover narration.
Yeah. And I guess you could say flashbacks, and they kind of jump back and forth in the time periods, and then a lot of voiceover narration. So we're at 4.
Dangerous Babes.
100%. 5. The whole city of them.
The whole city of Dangerous Babes.
Riding the Rails. No. He talked about riding a train back, but there was no other mention of trains.
From Dusk Till Dawn. I don't think any of it took place during the day, did it?
Right. Yeah. It seemed like it. Yeah.
And ends on a sour note. Alexis Bledel in the elevator with unknown man.
Yeah. And also like shooting himself and all that. I'll give that a 7.
Yeah. I mean, this is one of the more noir.
Yeah. Basically, other than being a little shorter and taking place in the time period, I don't know what more they really could have done.
Yeah.
So 7 out of 10. Sin City, that's how noir yar.
I love it.
Does that make you happier?
It does make me happy. Thank you. If you come up with a name, you have to bring the hype for it.
I need like the old school game
really
show host,
thin
like
microphone. Yeah. All right. So on that note, time to jump into our notes. I believe it is time for me to go first. I tried to make note this week of who went last week and this week to try to keep us on track.
You convinced me. Let's go.
All right. So in the opening scene with Josh Hartnett, I don't know if we ever figure out who that actress was.
She looked familiar, but
But she was giving off some mad Jessica Rabbit vibes for me, with the red dress and like the way she was kind of moving was very Jessica Rabbit for me. And I don't know if that's because we just watched Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
It's fresh in your mind, but yeah, I see that now.
And I mean, I feel like to some extent, Who Framed Roger Rabbit had to be pulled in some kind of discussion of making this film, because it is one of the film noir remakes, parodies inspired by movies that, I don't know, I got some mad vibes from that. So I just had to talk about that to make some connections. And then my next note is CGI, because right off the bat, it was very much not
a whole lot. Yeah.
I mean, it was just all CGI. And
zooming in and out in this crazy little like helicopter drone zoom out into this city that turns into Spell Out Sin City.
But it's not that it even looks outdated. It looks exactly the way it's supposed to look. This very, I'm going to kind of skip down a little bit to like, I wrote just comic strip vibes. I mean, it all just had just like these very strong comic strip vibes. And I was not a big comic person, but even like the way Bruce Willis's tie was like flapping in the wind. I feel like, when the character's running, their tie is always flying back over their shoulder. And
just like the exaggerated movements. It's like, could you tell this movie was based on a graphic novel? It's like painfully obvious.
If I hadn't read that, I would be like, what is this movie? Oh my God. I mean, I think I would have been very annoyed by it if I hadn't known that it was based off of that.
It's like you could take so many stills throughout this movie and be like, oh yeah, that's the page on the graphic novel. I get it.
And even like in something I was looking up while we were watching it, it was pretty much a shot for shot remake of the graphic novel it was based off of. So I can see very much the like exaggerated movements from it.
I would hope so, with how like deliberate it seemed like all of those motions were.
And to that note, I think this, let me talk about why I gave it what did I say, 6.7 is, do I want to watch this again? No, it's not my kind of movie. I'm not going to quote it. This is not for me. But this movie was so intentional and so artistically well done, given that it was based off a graphic novel. Do I think the script was great? No. Or like, I mean, I know it was based off of that, but like, as far as the storytelling of a movie, no. But like how intentional the shots and the lighting and the CGI and just like all of that, like artistry of it, to me is just like so amazing and so well done that I just took away so much artistically from this. And that's why I felt like I had to give it a higher score, even though I don't really want to watch it ever again. And I'm not going to quote it.
I kind of want to change my score already. And I know I gave it a 5, thinking more on some of my criteria of quotability. And if I saw it on TV, would I be willing to just like sit there and pick it up and rewatch like the rest of it or most of it? I'm going to bump mine up to a 6.0. I just think that there were a lot of times that I found myself, even though I haven't seen this movie in forever, like I knew what line they were going to say or what the quote was before they said it. And there's some that
you were saying it while we were watching it.
That I think I can justify bumping it up to a 6.0, but I don't think I can go any higher than that really, just based on how not tacky, but like some like over the top and really almost forced some of the things seemed.
And that's, so I feel like in the before show, I was talking about it being like a parody to some extent. And you're like, well, it's not really a parody. But I feel like it's
a caricature for sure. That's the best way to describe it.
It is some kind of, it's comical to watch. I mean, obviously it's very violent and not as, I don't know, like low key as the violence in the 1940s ones are. But I mean, this was super over the top and laughable in like some when, certain
Marv was going over his equipment list, he's like, this rope and these handcuffs and this tripwire.
And it was just the shots.
In my mitts. And like show his like hands there. Like the way that it was thrown into the shot, I'm like, that's...
And the fact that he was he's like reading off this list, but it's just like pictures of individual things on a black screen. Like it was not like... just like saying the list of things. It was showing everything that he was talking about. So much of that stuff was just very funny to me. And would I have found it as funny if I hadn't just watched 5 weeks in a row of this similar style of film? Maybe not. But I found myself kind of laughing at some of it, being like, oh, they're like making fun of this, or they're really overdoing this comic book strip type of look.
And I think I would appreciate that and have rated it better if some of the film noir original movies we had seen had shown me more of this, but I still feel like I'm going crazy with I see all these parodies and caricatures of this, and I still do not see the original movie. Like what are the original material that they're basing this off of? If I saw that and had that, I think I would find this more comical. And I was really hoping that like the Maltese Falcon and the Big Sleep that we would see this, but they told their own stories and that was all fine and good. But it wasn't this original thing, and like the like from last week with Who Framed Roger Rabbit with the jazzy music and all that, and then with this one with all the voiceover narration and the over the top like acting and all the rain and everything, they're parodying and caricaturizing something, but what?
I know
it's driving me crazy,
and that's why a little bit I hate to cut season 2 now.
But we'll do some research. We'll find what we're looking for.
Yes, we will. Well, we're going to do a little recap at the end.
One does not become cultured in one night.
I love that. One does not become cultured in one night. Exactly. But anyways, I don't know. I really appreciated the art of this movie. It was very specific.
It was artsy for sure.
Because you could not just apply this to any movie. It was very specific. It was very intentional, but they went after it and they really committed to it. And I thought it was really well done. And I have to give this higher score for that.
Yeah. I get
it. Would I have appreciated this if we'd watched this in like episode 2 or 3? No. But where I'm at episode like 22 or whatever we're on now.
If I just said, let's watch an action movie and put this on, you'd be like, no.
I would have fallen asleep so quick. 100%.
But with a little bit of culture, a little bit of film noir there, a little different light.
I said that I'm going to look into the colors of why things were, was it more intentional or was it just based off the graphic novel? I think it was just the graphic novel. We'll see. And then my last thing, which is ironic because it is about the opening credits. I just had to talk about the other stuff first. As the opening credits were rolling, I was just getting some vibes of like Cameron Diaz in The Holiday being like, it's a nice Christmas red, or like, you know, how she like describes the trailer, and the music was really like intense, like the way that it is in whatever trailer she's critiquing in The Holiday.
I want to go back and rewatch the trailer for this because I remember a lot of like action flowy shots from the trailer. I want to see if it's as I remember.
Yeah, I am very intrigued. And I also was starting to Google DVD behind the scenes extras, because I assume this has to have, being in 2005, actual DVD behind the scenes extras to see if there's anything on YouTube that we can watch. But the opening credits gave me some, like, I could just hear Cameron Diaz being like, oh, we don't need this red, we need this red, and we need the music to hit here. And just, that's all I could think. It made me giggle.
Oh, The Holiday.
Those are my notes.
So speaking of the opening credits, I did like how this movie just jumped right in. I think so many movies we've seen have been like, here's opening credits, here's this long, you know, intro sequence, whatnot. This really kind of jumped in, and they did have a title sequence afterwards, but I did kind of appreciate the whole, like, we're jumping right into this movie, like, before you even have any idea what's going on, the title's not even shown, you're launched into a scene to see, like, here's this, like, crime drama, what's going on, opening a bunch of, like, plot storylines there. I did really like the immediacy of that. Noted the voiceovers. That's felt very, very, not stereotypical, but very much like on point with like a film noir type movie. The way he was kind of talking with that pace and like that, how he was describing things, and like
the gruff voice. Everybody, whoever was doing voiceover, Bruce Willis,
and talking of things in like the present tense too. It just felt all the voiceovers felt very much like what I think of when I think of like film noir. We mentioned that this felt very much like a comic book and like a film, or not a film, or a graphic novel. All of the visuals, obviously, but even the special effects of just like throwing guys like out of cars and like punching through walls and
just jumping out of windows,
people's limbs off, and all these things felt very much like you see like a still shot of a novel or a comic strip, and seeing like people flying everywhere,
and even just the rain. Like the rain felt very comic book style rain. I mean, it was just, all of it was so like, and I haven't even read that many comic books, or I mean, any. I've read some comic strips in the newspaper, but like,
I don't think I've ever read a graphic novel.
I have not. I maybe had some in my classroom when I was teaching, but like I never read them.
Yeah, I'd love to know how they shot some of these scenes to really get the light to look like that, especially filming in black and white.
Yeah, I mean, for real, tomorrow we're watching some as whatever behind the scenes we can find on YouTube, because I have a lot of questions.
Yeah, next week we'll have a slept on it segment for this and a recap of this season.
Definitely.
So, yeah, I really would like to see how they filmed all of that. I thought the acting was just very much over the top, and I get that they were doing a graphic novel or like a dramatization of all these things with like the special effects and the movements and everything, but it still felt like some of the characters were just like obnoxiously overacting, where it almost felt like they were bad acting.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it didn't. Also, I don't know that the actual storyline of it was great. It was fitting into this like niche of what we think it's supposed to be, but it was not, oh my gosh, like this is so interesting, I need to know what's going on. I had a really hard time following it because there was a lot of characters and there was a lot of like this story and then this story and then this story that it was hard to follow.
What I couldn't get over was that Marv is played by Mickey Rourke, and they kept talking about
Thank you, because
as being named Rourke,
because I'm looking at the cast while we're watching the first little bit, and then I was like trying to follow this.
It's actually based on a true story,
right? It was so confusing. I didn't know what was going on, and I'm glad you bring that up because it was hard to follow.
No, but talking about all the acting and everything, it made me question who this movie was for, because it's rated R. So you think like 17 plus, but it felt like so much of the violence and the acting and the plot lines felt like it was more geared towards like a 13-year-old boy.
That was
like a young boy to be like, the way these guys are so like tough and the damsel in distress and saving the world and all these cool cliche lines. It felt like I kept getting flashbacks to A Christmas Story and thinking of like how he sees the what's his hero with the BB gun. He wanted to be like the Red Rider, or
I think it's Red Rider.
Yeah,
I don't know that movie very well.
But I'm thinking of like those old like 1950s 50s of those really cool action guys that have these cool lines and do these cool things. And it seemed like that's more what it was geared towards. And so the last note that I have was that they had a car phone in there. And I feel like that I was trying to wonder like what the time period was for this, because it seemed like it was like geared towards like a earlier, like all these film noir movies we've been watching have been like in the 40s, taking place in that time period. And I was like, was this in the 80s that this took place in, or
I don't know,
couldn't
but
quite place it.
Alexis Bledel had like an actual flip phone,
Mm-hmm.
which would have been very 2005.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very vague on that, because I was wondering that too.
The cars were very old.
Mm-hmm. It was just like a nice mesh of times.
And like in the hospital at the very end felt much more modern.
But when Bruce Willis was in the hospital with all the like glass IVs and stuff, that felt really in the past.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess it was supposed to be like 8 years before, or 8+ years beforehand, but like, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
The timeline was weird.
Yeah.
There was a lot to follow and a lot to track and to like, I don't know.
Yeah, it was weird.
It's a weird movie.
It's a whole mix of time periods, but
I feel like it's just like a mesh of a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? Oh, you were talking about who this movie was made for.
Mm-hmm.
You know who I think would really like it? Jake Peralta from Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Oh, of course. I mean, he would like any sort of like over the top action movie for sure.
That it was just all these like really over the top like,
Mm-hmm.
and that's minus the like nudity. I think it could have been PG-13.
Yeah, that was kind of what was weird to me. It's like you could have removed that and still gone PG-13 and still done really well, unless the whoever wrote the original graphic novels was like, it needs to be true to the shot, and they had to have these like topless women in it. It seemed like they could have backed off a little bit and probably been more successful.
They could have covered the women just a little bit more and gotten away with a PG-13 rating, and I wonder how that would have changed like the box offices and their target audience and all that kind of stuff, because I feel like
some of the violence though and the blood and gore might have still pushed them over the edge to R.
Yeah,
which still makes you question like, who was it made for?
Yeah,
Is it
not made for me? I can tell you that.
Yeah, just grew up in that time period and just wanted some nostalgia aspect
or like
of it.
Fans of the comic book, which is how many people?
Yeah.
I don't know. Because, I mean, but I think also maybe because we've been watching all these noir films, the violence still to me, and because it was based off a graphic novel, it seemed so caricaturized that it was like not believable that they were, cutting all this stuff off. I mean, I guess he did like rip that guy's penis off, which like, I don't know if that's what
going on there,
what got
off and all
it
that.
Really aggressive. But like, I feel like most of the like blood, it wasn't even blood. It was like yellow or white. That it was. I
don't know. There was still some blood in there of like cutting the guy's head off, biting a neck off, all of those things, and slicing things and seeing the blood spattering over the face. I don't know if they could have gotten away with PG-13 even with that. That still makes it even more perplexing of who was this for. Yeah,
it's a very weird movie,
and
if I didn't love the like artistic side of it so much, it would definitely be like a 3 for me. Like, it's not my kind of movie. But I appreciate, I've seen so many movies now, how many, like 20 some in the last couple of weeks, that I just appreciate how much was so intentional about this movie and the like artistic side of it that I don't know.
Can you imagine all like the camera angles and like how they captured a lot of these shots, because there was so much special effects and so many, that's why I want to know how this was made of how they shot like the black and white and the crazy angles and this like the violence and that they had to capture.
Is it all on green screen? It
must have been a lot,
right?
Some very small sets, I assume, but like a lot of green screen and a lot of CGI.
I bet those best boys were doing their best work on this. And the first and second camera assistant,
100%, and the cinematographer.
Oh god, that cinematographer.
But one last note that I didn't actually write down, but I was looking at is, so they talked about Bruce Willis in the beginning, and they said that he was pushing 60 in the opening part where he's saving Nancy, and then obviously it cuts to 8 years later, and right now Bruce Willis is 68.
Okay,
and it's crazy because he, in this movie, still seemed obviously still fit and able, a little bit aging, whatnot. But it's really sad because just in the last like year or so, he has like dementia and it's going downhill.
It's
and,
all I
like,
could think about.
Can't act anymore. But like
Broke
because
my
of all
heart.
that, it's why like that's the age he was supposed to be in the end, and like that's how he is now. But he's not that big, tough, all those wits about him, able to save himself and do all those things. It's just
that definitely crossed my mind several times and made me really sad.
Yeah, because he's honestly younger than I thought. Like only 68. That's still so much more to live and do, and can't act anymore. Can't remember why he's on set. Just tragic.
Very heartbreaking
for such an iconic actor. So sorry, Bruce, but great movie.
Definitely. But this also made I'm like, what other Bruce Willis movies? I mean, this was what's going through my head as I
Next
watched
season,
this.
Bruce Willis. No,
No, we've already committed to the musicals. I'm too excited to let go of that. But I just really want to watch The Sixth Sense again. I mean, I've seen it when it came out in that time period, and I need to see it again.
I've seen it like once since my original watching of it.
It just takes me back to another Lonely Island song.
Yep, I was going to say.
Thank you.
I was in spoilers for anyone. Bruce Willis was dead at the end of Sixth Sense.
Yeah. So that's what I was thinking during this entire movie. So we need to watch that at some point.
Yeah.
But now I'm stuck on that.
What a great song.
Yes, but anyways, so is that all we've got for Sin City?
That is all we have for Sin City. It's not all we have for the season because we will end it with a recap next week.
Yes. Stay tuned for
a segment.
For any behind the scenes deep dives that we do for this Sin City and our season 2 recap, and to jump into season 3.
Yeah.
I'm excited for a new one. I think I'm ready for something new, and
this will be a hard pivot for sure.
yes, I was gonna say we talked about how we wanted to hard pivot. This is a true 180-degree pivot. So if you are enjoying the podcast, if you could rate and review wherever you get your podcast, if you are watching on YouTube, if you could subscribe and like the videos, leave comments of what you want to see more of, what you want to see less of, any feedback or any comments if we got anything wrong, or if you have any additional information to add, please feel free to share. We love to learn more about movies. And anything else?
That's it.
So for this week and season 2,
cheers.
Cheers.